Good.
Okay, so Christina is on her way in, and we'll go ahead and call ourselves to order here at noon precisely. So with that, we'll just hit it alphabetically. And Christina, if you'd start us off with a roll call.
Sure. Christina Barron's present.
Linnea Gustafson present.
Steve, that's you.
Really? You're before
Paige.
me, aren't you? Oh no,
Paige.
Steve Hughes here.
Emily Lanto.
And Tracy Wascom present. All right, so with that, we'll just take a moment and we need to consent the agenda. So if it looks like we're good, we just need the motion to sort of accept it.
Motion to accept the agenda.
Oh, and if it wasn't clear, because we don't have Maureen here, we also need somebody to jot down some notes, at least to give us some semblance of minutes as we go. And before we get too far along, is there somebody who's at least willing to give us a course note-taking as we move on? And I can't do it if I'm going to run a meeting. So I'm just going to own that one right now.
It's all recorded to YouTube as well.
Perfect. Okay, so then we'll have to sort of go off and handle it that way. So Steve Hughes has given us the initial motion to accept the minutes. Can we get a second?
I second.
Okay, Emily seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any discussion about it, about the agenda? Wonderful. All right, so we also need to then go back and approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Emily sent those out in our gap between our last meeting and this one. Do we have any additions, amendments, or other changes that might need to be made in relationship to the minutes that folks can see? And I'll just take head shakes as
I don't know because
I didn't see any. So with that, again, we need a motion to approve our minutes.
I can motion to approve.
Thank you, Linnea. If we can get a second.
Second.
Thanks, Christina. All those in favor to accept the minutes as they stand now, just please put your hand up. We're good. All right, excellent. So that is now out the door. So now we have our window for public comment. If there's any that are present, or if Tina, anybody has submitted anything to you for today?
Nope.
And it sounds like we're good there. Spectacular. That moves us on. And to the chair report, I'm not reporting. We've got so much other stuff to deal with that a lot of it's going to roll in to the business that we have to do today. So I have no report upon which to chair today. So Tina, do you have anything that you would like to address in the manager's report?
Not really, with the exception that our town grant is going well. Hopefully I'll submit it Monday morning. Thanks for both Tracy and Emily for sending bios, and really appreciate your help with that. And one thing to note is Taylor Kuliu has taken a position as Michigan's marketing manager for the Michigan Chamber of Commerce in Lansing. So she'll be leaving us, which, you know, everyone that's left that particular position, it is part-time, has gone on to do great things. So it's really great. She will continue to be the marketing and promotions coordinator for the Upper Peninsula Arts and Culture Alliance, because the Michigan Chamber obviously covers all 15 counties of the UP. So a great connection for the city and the Alliance to have Taylor downstate. Pretty excited about that. So we have gotten approval for a rehire position. So if you know anyone that wants a 29-hour work week, being our marketing promotions, you know, social media is the biggest portion, and then assisting with other projects, we will be hiring. It is an entry, you know, level position, but a great position for someone that's interested in social media, marketing, design, and working for a city arts center. And that's it.
All right. I was just making a note because it's definitely something we'll pass on to certain faculty in our building, because I think they probably have a few people they could think of almost immediately to at least put forward as part of the application process.
Mhm.
All right, so that moves us on to item 7, which is the Friends of Marquette Public Art Commission report. Do we have anything that needs to be reported on immediately before we eventually hopefully get to the actual impact logo discussion?
No, I have briefly talked to Jen Beer and Nina Itner. And, I think we're waiting for that logo. We haven't met since COVID. And some of these first projects, and then we're going to reconvene and kind of start fresh with logo and projects in place and kind of develop a plan moving forward. So I think the next meeting, or for sure September's meeting, I'll have time to attend to that. I'll have a bigger report.
Okay, that's great. So at this point, I'm gonna actually share my screen, which hopefully everybody can see now. Let me move some stuff over so I can still see faces. Get my grid up here because that'll help me. All right. So the first piece of new business was to sort of comment back on wayfinding signage. And Tina had sent us an email at some point that gave us a set of examples that were the sort of core central group of them. And then there were some additional examples that she sent in a subsequent message, and wanted our feedback to give to the various sort of trail coalition partners in terms of kind of what do we think about the possibility, not I guess your possibility, the design of these signs. And my understanding, Tina, is that it's sort of like this style. Is that correct? That the one that they were sort of leaning towards?
Yeah, both of those two on the bottom left there, where you put up a logo. I mean, that's, I think, not even leaning. I think when they thought of that style, that whole style, that's what they thought of. And I thought, well, one of the things now with the Public Art Commission being available is, well, let's see, could we incorporate better design into a standard wayfinding signage? Are there some suggestions? And this is new for me as well. So I just took some simple, but maybe something a little more unique to show all of you to get your feedback. I mean, there's no money right now budgeted for this. It'll probably be dependent on, what we're looking at. And then we'll have to figure out if there's money available this fiscal year. Can we find a donor? So we're looking at something simple for sure.
So folks, do y'all have sort of, again, kind of thoughts on sort of what you sort of are thinking, thoughts about what you think? Do you have sort of observations about the kind of signs that you think would be a good addition visually to our community in this whole thing? I mean, I'll tell you, I'll start it. Given that that was the sort of general sensibility that they were leaning towards, I have to admit, this is my preference. One, I think it gives a lot of flexibility. No, it is not, sort of these kind of vibrant cluster of colors, and no, it wouldn't have to deal with illumination, which could be really great, but I just envision the challenges of having to fix those in the middle of winter under a bunch of snow, and like the pragmatics of that just suddenly got really complicated. But I appreciated the clean lines of this as opposed to something that sort of feels like it sort of lost itself in the 70s and decided not to come back. Which is nothing against people who actually have that. That's probably great for them, but that's not the visual I'd like to see Marquette adopt. So that was kind of my take on this whole thing, while also recognizing to me that things like this would be amazing, but the cost on that is going to just escalate radically in terms of the actual production value and sort of what it would take to actually implement something like that.
My thought was the one on the upper, I am pointing at your screen like you can
Yes,
see.
I know, I'm like, I'd love
the
to.
one in the upper left corner, and
This one here?
primarily,
Yeah, I like
not
that too.
necessarily even the color, but I really appreciated the fact that if we're thinking about a trail system, that you can both see it visually and read about it, and that it has a couple of working signs to it, and it also is not as, it maybe blends into the landscape more. There's a visual identity that we could use even our logo or things like that through it, but it isn't, it doesn't speak like sign, like billboard. And I think that in a natural setting, that might be preferable to kind of honor the sort of materials around the trail, which are like wood and not plastic. It doesn't seem as plastic to me. I don't know. That's just my sort of initial gut reaction.
Okay.
I felt really similarly. Emily, that top left one was absolutely my favorite. I think it's really beautiful and just simple, but very eye-catching. I do feel like it's a little more of a modern style, so I don't know if that necessarily fits as much. But other than that, I do like the wood elements. And so I also like the one at the bottom right a lot, where I guess you are a little bit more complicated in the design with incorporating the metal as well. But I kind of like that look with the, I guess regardless, my favorite ones all were the ones that had wood in them and kind of channeled that natural element. I like the metal just for a little bit of visual interest as well.
Can you go to the next slide, please?
Mhm.
I also liked the one that Tracy likes in the top left corner, but aesthetically, I like the design on the cluster of them that she pointed out too. Second in, yep, that one. So I kind of like the mix of those two was my preference. And if you go to the back to the first slide, I like how they incorporated the painting around the top center one on the pavement just to draw attention to it. I thought that might be something neat to do when they're new. So people draw attention to it to start.
Steve?
Yeah, I don't really like the trailhead ones. I just sent Tina that message. They just felt, yeah, billboard, as Emily put it, that it's just going to get things tacked up on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did prefer the aesthetics of the top left, and I agree that the painting around it is compelling, an interesting way to maybe further our maybe long-term involvement
Mm-hmm.
in doing more of that. So if there was sort of a pedestal or platform that could just continually be repainted, I think that could be interesting.
Okay. So Tina, does that give you at least a starting point?
It gives me a lot of guidance, and I love that this is being videotaped too, because then they can actually hear it from you. I thank you. I know that you guys have put a lot of thought into it, and I really appreciate the guidance, and I will let you know what they say.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So that is part one. Let me get back to our agenda. All right, so the second piece of business that we have, and I'll let Tina kind of lead that in, was that Jess Nemi, who was the original sort of painter of those murals at the skate park, would like to basically move forward with another kind of installment of that.
So Jess approached me and he said, I get the feeling, I don't know, he heard through the grapevine that maybe I should talk to you before I just start painting in the skate park again. Because that's how he did those first ones. He had never talked to anyone. And I told him he kind of got grandfathered in. He didn't know that we've taken, or he didn't know, I think Lene has reached out to him a couple times. So that's probably why he knows, right? So he knows his work has been documented. I said he got the thumbs up from Carl Zuger, former community services director, when he was first doing it. Thought it was great. But how does he go on from here? Does he just have access to that area? Is he our skateboard plaza artist? Does he have to go through a formal process with us to add to that skate park? I think we all agree that it's wonderful to have any art down there, and his being a supporter makes it really personal, and it happened very organically. So I guess that's what we're here to discuss. How can he move forward with wanting to do more portraits and drawings down there?
So the one thing I did want to bring up comes back to our kind of documentation that we actually worked on to sort of get all of this together. So pardon me while everybody gets a little bit of vertigo as we sort of scan through this process. And looking back in terms of the kind of acceptance models that we have, technically based off of what he's done, it's a slightly different thing because the work sort of exists. But at this point, when we talk about getting new works in, we had 3 models that we ultimately looked at, and that was commission, purchase, and gift, in terms of how we considered new additions into this model. And I suppose the question becomes, if this is considered a commission, because basically now that it's a work in our collection, and he's building on a work in the collection, we have to consider like how this links into how we think about the collection as a whole, not just this one particular piece. So we're not purchasing it. And even if he chooses to do it, this commission isn't one where we're going to hire him, but we might, neither is the process that we're going to do with the bike path murals. But which of these ways that we're going to envision any additions to these murals at the skate park? And since it's on city property, it's challenging for me to see this as a gift, because they're not actually giving something in a sort of object over sort of way to the city. And if it's a commission, then we do have a system that we've put into place that talks about how we actually go through the process of accepting a work into the collection, which is, pardon me, because this is going to come up later as well. This is the process that we sort of established and agreed to in relationship to getting works into the collection, which would mean that ultimately a design would have to be approved. It would be open for community review and comment. That would be presented to the city before the painting would actually be allowed to begin, if we see it as that kind of relationship to our existing collection. So that's something that we need to be sort of thinking about here too. So Emily, it looks like your hand popped up.
Well, I was just thinking we would have to go through those. I was reiterating. I was saying what you were going to say as you were saying it. And then the other thing I was thinking, like, if it is a gift, then, you know, theoretically somebody could paint or make something that could be applied to a surface, and that would be a different way of being allowed to add to that thing, you know? So, which is different than what the sort of person seeks permission for. But those are my thoughts.
Folks, we need, because we have to sort of be able to provide some guidance. So I'm looking for some thoughts, observations, or insights from folks.
I think if you just say, go for it, it's very dangerous. That's my thought.
Mm-hmm.
One thought I have, you know, working with, having seen this evolve when the skate park was built, is that, you know, maybe he presents to you what he's envisioning. Maybe there is, because maybe he's continuing a project, and it happened before the Public Art Commission was created, and he obviously had this vision, and maybe to treat it as a completion and have a decision as far as what's your vision, and then we can all decide on that. And then moving forward, I mean, it would be nice to have other artists in that space working as well, and to allow for that. So I get what Emily said. It's very dangerous to just say go for it, because other people need their opportunity there as well.
Right.
So that's just a thought I had of him.
And even if he, and even if he does this, the steps we've agreed upon, and this is going to play out also for us in the bike path thing, we don't get to just say, we decide and the project goes. The system works that we make a decision, things are open for public comment, the city approves the decisions that we want to make, and then the project unfolds. So even if we sort of like what he's doing, ultimately, as sort of stewards of the city's collection, we make, and I actually went back and double checked the original policy that established us, we make recommendations. We don't ultimately get to say yes. We get to say, yes, this is what we think, and then the city ultimately approves that.
Yeah, like we say, cool idea, let's push it ahead, but we don't, we're not like, go, you get the golden ticket, go for it. Yeah. You know, like, and even by saying that right now, I'm not only saying like nobody else is getting a chance. What I'm saying is that sort of permissive attitude could just be like, well, they said yes to this person, so I'm just going to go start coloring on this building or this thing or that bench, or, and I don't think that that's exactly what the city wants. That's not their intention. Is they don't want people just carrying out their artistic whimsy on all of their public spaces. Right? I mean, they wanted to go through the process.
Mm-hmm. So I guess if I'm, before I kind of summarize this, so Steve, Linnea, Christina, do y'all have any other sort of like bits to add in here?
I mean, I really like Tina's suggestion that it be a proposal for like a completion. Mm-hmm. I think that's perfect. And then that opens up the opportunities for other people.
I agree.
I feel like it can still go through this process that we're talking about. And maybe the fact that he's done the work previously and it's a completion kind of streamlines it, but it's still, I totally agree. I think it still makes sense to go through this just to establish that precedent.
And maybe it could also then, he could apply for the second project of hiring, having a stipend for this fiscal year yet for $500 a piece to encourage local artists to do public art. I don't know how he would, knowing that that's coming up, if there was a, you know, a way for him to apply for that as well, or apply his proposal.
Yeah, I suppose the bottom line comes down to how quickly does he want to move forward? Because that particular RFP, my guess is we won't really be looking at that until probably well into October.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
I mean, just knowing the timeline to get the RFP written, to get the approval done, to get the proposals in and have that happen, let alone to get them approved and authorized, like we make the recommendation, the city signs off on it, it ultimately gets underway. For it to move, I mean, the point is like our process is a process, right? For it to be able to ultimately work and not become a free for all. So even we don't even have the point where we know we want to do the project, but we're still focusing on the bike path project. And to be perfectly honest, those of us who are also getting ready to start teaching again, we're still navigating the whole new dynamic of what it means to be teaching in the face of COVID. So the focus initially is we want to make sure we get this first RFP done well before we start tackling a second one on top of that, on top of everything else that everybody's doing. So if it's about him getting some of a potential, right, assuming he was chosen for that project recompense, then that's going to push that project down the line. However, if he sees it as a completion, a gift, in the way that he approached it before, which was he just did the thing. He wasn't asked for, as far as I know, was whether he was paid to do those murals in the first place when he got permission. If he sees it as a completion of this project, that's a different thing in terms of a timeline. We still have to go through the steps, but it's not going to defer it until well late into the fall.
So I could give him all this information, say if he could have something for our next, well, before our next meeting, say maybe Friday, September 4th, so you would have time to review it before the next meeting.
And understand that his decision, that is, he's going to be the second, he's not going to be the first item on the agenda. Our first item on the agenda for that meeting is going to be the bike path mural project.
Right. And then, you know, and that's, yeah, if everything went smoothly, he potentially could get on the city commission, I believe, a meeting on the 21st, the 14th or the 21st, probably the 21st, if there is a meeting on the 21st, the 28th. So that's what he would be looking at. Question is what, I'll go back through the policy, and it's so wonderful that we have that as far as what he needs to present to us. And we might not have that written up.
Actually,
As far as his independent presentation, you know, it's because it's not an RFP.
no, it's not an RFP, but if we come back to, we have the application, we've got our application information. I mean, this is not quite a gift in this way, but there are like, I mean, we sort of go back through and you can take a look at sort of the different ways that we're going to consider it, the different kind of criteria that we're going to weigh it by, how we're going to think about this part of the selection process. It is there.
Okay.
And we're not going to tell him how to sort of go about his project, but it's sort of like, does it meet our criteria? What's the quality of the work's construction? What's the benefit? All of that stuff is sitting there ready to be used, which is kind of why we spent all the time we did.
Another
So
thing too-
I will look at that. I will go
Yeah.
over all of that with him, and
Okay.
and then
I remember I contacted him regarding what he used, and he uses a grease pencil, and he says he just continues to work on them and touch them up as he skates. So I think we need to address this in the completion part of it. If there's going to be that maintenance that he's going to keep doing, continuing to work on them, I think we need that in writing somewhere too. Also, don't like as this evolves.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's just keep trucking on because I know we've only got, I know especially Christina's on a super tight timeline. So I want to make sure we sort of move forward here. So in relationship to the cultural trail and the Our Town grant, I also wanted to have this pulled up to see if we might be able to come to at least a general consensus on what the subject, not the location, right? Not the object, because that will be tied to whatever artist would be sort of submitting to the RFP that would come from it. The kind of work that we would ideally, as the Public Art Commission, like to see emerge in relationship to the cultural trail and the Our Town grant. So I guess the question I'd asked in the email, kind of prepping everybody, is what stories or ideas do we think are currently absent that would be well served to be sort of made more visible through this next, ideally pretty large public artwork that we'd like to do? And I know where my vote is, but I'm not going to sort of dominate this discussion. So I'm kind of curious. So Christina, do you have a thought? I'm going to start with you.
I guess just high level, like I'm definitely interested in highlighting, you know, as you have here, kind of some of the more broad cultural history and not just, you know, keeping it as narrow as we currently have. Definitely, you know, some of the Native American heritage that you've got on here. And I think the other thing too is we just, you know, certainly there's a lot of, I know we had talked about it previously, but there's a lot of obviously natural beauty and such here. And I'd like to see, you know, some public art that channels that as well. But to be honest, I haven't had a chance to, I guess, think in too much depth on this yet.
Okay. Steve?
I'm all for the indigenous population story being told. That would be number one for me.
Linnea?
I think it's good. I agree. You know, the native part is important, and I think the different ethnic backgrounds is important too. Ties in with the history of the UP.
Okay. Emily?
For the indigenous art and in conjunction with thinking about how land is important, you know, like as a central or a tangential relationship to why or how that story unfolds. So definitely interested in work that either points to Indigenous experience is about the importance of the land that we're on and the sort of history of that land.
All right. Well, y'all, that's pretty much where I am too. Actually, I'm a huge advocate for this next, ideally this next phase of a large public artwork, also acknowledging that where we are has a history and a place beyond just those people who sort of came here later, and the opportunity to also honor those that technically and realistically founded this area first, I think is a really important thing that we could be doing in terms of public art. So
I also think that it's important that it's an Indigenous maker. So
yes.
It is one of us like making and I mean, I will just say that from the start.
No, I think that's great. And we will, I think that could be, and that will be part of the RFP, is that this isn't about speaking on behalf of another group of individuals. This is about allowing those individuals to have that voice to tell their story at a place and at a location. And that will definitely be something that will be sort of written, I think, or should be really well considered as we think about an RFP.
I mean, I think it could be collaborative, but I definitely don't think it should be somebody speaking on behalf of somebody else's.
No. All right, so I think this is one, because we weren't just referencing policy in terms of giving Tina sort of guidance on the Jess Nimi subject, that I think we need an official sort of motion in this thing. So I guess we're looking for a motion to put forward that the Our Town grant that we will be submitting will include the sort of designation of an Indigenous focused public artwork as part of our grant application.
I make a motion that the Our Town grant will have an Indigenous artwork as the center proposal of the grant.
Okay. Can we get a second? You just raise your hand, folks. All right, Christina seconds. All those in favor, put your hands up as a big ol'. All right, we are unanimous. So there you go, Tina. That can then get wrapped into the Our Town grant, where it hasn't just been a discussion, it is that we will be doing it, which
So
is
now I'm
great.
really excited. I didn't know if you guys are going to go in this direction or not, but there is a really large grant from the Michigan Native Heritage Foundation, forgetting the correct name, and I really want to go for it to add to all of this to make it even a bigger project. So we can talk about it's due in October. We can talk more about that later, but maybe it'll be way bigger than we realize. So, or you know, we can have more budget. So excited.
All right. So really quickly, I had also wanted to put on there, and you can see it there as the item for our new business, is we have a few ad hoc committees that are in place in order to sort of make some of our project logistics go quicker. I can certainly say that for like the Words to Live and Bike By, sort of narrowing that down to a couple people who could do the work and then everybody else just sort of responds back makes our process move more quickly, particularly because we do only meet once every 4 weeks. So this time becomes really, really precious. So I wanted to sort of take a look at these groups and identify if there was anyone who wanted to join a particular group and is willing to sort of participate in that. So as we get to these things, including things like the policy and maintenance handbook, that we don't spend our meetings trying to do collaborative editing, that instead that editing can happen outside of it. We can respond and discuss it as needed in the meeting, but we can, because we're only going to keep getting more stuff on our docket, right? It's only going to keep increasing. So right now, in terms of Artsopolis, so Linnea and Christina, you two are kind of the leads on that. Are y'all good continuing to sort of be that ad hoc? Like you're over here, so I'm looking here and I might move y'all on this side. So I see, so Linnea's not, Christina, are you good to still keep doing the Artsopolis as we move forward and think about, and of course, when Maureen gets back, we'll make sure that she also tucks herself in on a couple of these groups. Stephen has sort of taken the lead, and thank you for that, on the project backboard. I'm certainly willing to also sort of help review and read that RFP like more in depth as we're moving forward. But is there anyone else that wants to sort of jump on the project backboard kind of ad hoc? Em, you're muted. Unmute.
I can be on either on like the art, the future art thing and Steven's thing.
Okay.
It doesn't. I'm happy to be a third or a second on one of those.
So this
I would be interested in being on the project backboard too, once this Words to Live and Bike By wraps up.
Okay.
I also feel that we could use someone with a little bit of artistic background with medium in the Artsopolis too. So that besides, so.
Okay, so let's do this. All right.
What was the goal of the Artsopolis ad hoc? I honestly can't remember.
It's going to be on Marquette, the internet link. Our inventory is going to go live and there's going to be a map and all this different things. So there's a lot of inputting to do. It's basically going to catalog all of the photos that have been taken, but there's some questions and different things about medium and
I thought city staff was going to input things into the actual Artsopolis calendar.
So the goal with this initial committee, we did talk to the staff from Artsopolis, and yeah, they did have questions about the initial design and setup. Once we start inputting, as far as choices that we need to have as a part of our public art directory for medium, like Linnea was saying, how you want it to look. I actually don't think a lot, maybe just a couple questions that the committee or Christina and Linnea could give to any of you. If they're stuck, we could ask others a question. I haven't had a chance to give any attention to it. Staff was going to input it all. I know Linnea volunteered, had some time to work with Tristan. I think you guys have been communicating a little bit, Linnea.
I
No.
he sent me an email and I think I wrote him back, but I've been pretty much doing the Words to Live and Bike By.
So I think Tristan, our office will still, like Emily said, be working on
Okay.
that. So I think just making sure that new work is going in, or, you know, if staff has questions, they know which public art directory people to discuss it with.
I would be happy to consult as far as like what fields should be there in order, you know, thinking about how people will use it and look at it. And I think others on the committee would be happy to do that part too, just so that it works in the way that we're expecting it to work. But I think like then those questions should just be on the docket for the next meeting, so we can go through and go boom, 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 boom. These are the questions. These are the options. These are the questions. And then that seems like Christina and Linnea, if you could bring that to the committee, then we can all look at it and say, yes, like if I were looking at it, I'd use this function. And then that's over with. So it's not one person being like, well, I would use it like this. And then everybody in the whole world is like, that's not how I would do it, you know? So I think actually in a case with some of these questions, it might be good to have them in front of 4 or 5 people rather than just 2 or 3, because people use technology differently.
So what I can do is I'll work with Linnea and Christina, let's say end of next week or the week following, and we'll get they'll do a mock-up page, Artsopolis will, for us, and we can work on that with them, and then we can hopefully get ready to present it to the whole commission first week of September. But they do those, you know, that's not live yet, but this is what the design they have so far, and we can play with it and see how it works for us.
Okay.
Is that good? Okay.
All right. So then tentatively for the time being, it will be Steve, Linnea, and myself on Project Backboard. Emily, I'm happy to help as we kind of, because we'll basically be almost done, hopefully, with most of the Words to Live and Bike by the time the new RFP comes in to assist with that. I will take whatever help I can get on the policy and maintenance handbook as that moves forward.
I can probably help you on that.
I figured I'm gonna end up pestering you anyway, you know, since you have to deal with collections stuff.
No, but
Anyhow,
I'm
that
just
would be
kidding.
that would be awesome. And then the Words to Live and Bike By, I think, you know, we're getting to a point where I think we're probably pretty good, but I wanted to sort of put that out there in case anybody wanted to step in to take that on too. So if you change your mind, if you think about things, let me know, but this means then we can sort of have people actively working and then come and use this time as productively as possible. All right, so with that, we are on to Words to Live and Bike By. And so let me snag this. I'm gonna kind of put it in the background here. So Linnea, I know I've said this to you in private. Thank you so much for the amount of work that you did to get this to the point that you did. It was huge, and we wouldn't be on the even tentative timeline that we're on now if you hadn't done the work you've done. So thank you so much.
Thanks for all your help. You helped a lot.
You're welcome. It's moving, right? That's the kind of whole gist of what we were trying to do. And this also gives us a sense of kind of the timeline it's going to take to put these things into place as we move forward. So what we need today in relationship to this, hopefully folks have taken a look. If you have additional comments on things, you know, we've been sort of dropping comments in along the side. I didn't see any when I went and looked earlier today, but that was earlier today. Steve.
I tossed one in there.
Okay.
I guess when we were discussing this, I missed the last meeting, so I don't know how the financial thing is working.
Mm-hmm.
This is being asked of everyone to be for free. Is that what's happening, or was there going to be a stipend of some
We
kind?
did not in the original, when the budget that we all signed off on, there was no stipend that was built into that budget. So it's basically seen as a, yes, it is a sort of, you want to come and do this thing to do it for yourself. And yeah, that time was more about how long do we want to give people to do this? And Tina, if you have staff out there, how long this is going to work. So before we get to this, based off of let's just make sure we've got this kind of situated. So this is the tentative application that we've got. That deadline stuff is likely going to have to change, Linnea, based off of the timeline that's built into our policy for acceptance and approval. But let's make sure before we get to that part that what we see up here is basically the stuff that we envision that we would need to get from folks. Nobody said otherwise, but does this look all right? In terms of, I'm just looking for like nodding yes or.
We want to see an Instagram or website if they've got one, just as a kind of a background check even.
We can certainly, I mean, we can put that in as a possibility.
I'm asking.
No, I know. And that's what I'm saying. So do we think do folks want that?
I say ask for Instagram just so that we can share it easily. You know, not necessarily just because we're spying on their Instagram account, but because we want to share the work easily.
So I think we could say in that way, do you want specifically, and they don't have, but we're not going to mandate that they have it. Like that's not a mandatory field. So,
Well,
so
could that be in the after part once they're selected?
I think Steve wanted it as a way to sort of potentially vet people beforehand, right? To sort of see the kind of work that they've done in the past.
Honestly, yeah, maybe a little bit. And maybe it's an organization's website. It's an optional field.
We've had calls already from people that, constantly call us what's going on. And I've told them about this opportunity. So one particular painting group in town with about 8 women, they're already, the application's not even live yet. They haven't seen anything, and they're all about that word remember. And in that case, it's a group of 8 people. So do they apply with one leader?
Yes.
That's taking responsibility, right? And, but do we also want to know the, all of their work or?
So maybe in this case, you could have this. So we could just do name of applicants, right? If there's more than one, right? We could actually put that there. In this case, if it's who's basically in charge, and that we could add in a sort of a website, whether you could put like Instagram, Facebook, something where we, there could be a way to.
I think Instagram or a website. I don't know if I want to go searching through people's Facebook posts.
Okay,
That's like a lot.
So we'll add a line in there that deals with that. Okay. Beyond that, the project
professional reference, Tracy or Steve, a professional reference.
I don't think that's it. I think it's mostly just to get a sense if it's available, like that they give us that as a choice. All right, so the prompt is basically there. That's just instructions. So the deadline for submission is currently listed as September 1st. Given the fact that, and pardon me while I jump to, I got to jump back to Word here really quick. And we got to scroll down here to this. We've already dealt with, based off of the way that we've already made a lot of this, not that part, but a chunk of it here. We've already worked on the design phase. We've dealt with the stuff with the city. All of that stuff is in place. We'll have the equivalent of a contract and a VARA waiver at the tail end of that RFP that we already have. The city's already kind of signed off on the site location, so we're good on that. We are basically then to the steps 8, 9, and 10. In relationship to this particular project. So per our proposals, if we take those works in on the 1st, we then, we have to make a decision. They go up there for public review and comment. That comment period is 1 week long, and then we make a final decision that is presented to the city. So this is where I'm going to pull up a calendar and I'm going to sling it over here. If those things come in on the 1st, right, because we need to give people some time to actually come in and do this. If we don't meet about these until the 8th, that means that public comment doesn't close until the 15th, which means that that doesn't get sent to approval to the city until the 21st, which means that the project doesn't start until the end of September.
For this particular one, I don't, because it's a community art project and you've already laid out the words and the locations, I really don't, you at this point don't need, it's not a permanent sculpture. You already have the concept. I don't think you need city commission approval of their specific designs. unless there was a concern of something being controversial.
Oh,
Okay.
we're not gonna pick something controversial, I don't think.
Right.
No, it's not. I just want to
You
make
know what
sure
I'm
that,
saying? I don't think we need to put
Okay.
another thing in there for that.
I just
We
want to,
kind of went through the process like in a different way. We got permission first and then did the
Yeah.
other steps.
right. Well, we got permission for the general idea. We don't know what people are going to do inside the words yet. And I'm actually fine personally if we just sort of say, we pick the designs, here's the public comment, and then we go. I just want to make sure that if we've set up a set of protocols, we don't just sort of throw them out whenever they're inconvenient, right? That's, I think, a bad precedent to set. So I want to make sure that we're doing it the right way as we move
Double
forward.
check on that for us.
What I think we could do then is give your recommendations to the city manager because he has the final say. So, and then he can decide if he feels he needs their opinion or their assistance, or he can make that decision himself.
Okay.
That might
But-
be a good way of going about it, is for the city manager to approve the final designs.
Yeah. The challenge of that, and I'm totally okay, is that we then need to know what that puts for our deadline for this project at. If we have to go through this, maybe they'll need to approve it and maybe they won't. That makes it a little bit more ambiguous.
Right.
But if the work comes in on the 1st, I guess my question is, obviously, we're not going to turn around and meet on the 2nd. That's just not viable. Is there the possibility, and I realize that it's the Friday before Labor Day weekend, where we could sneak in for a 1-hour meeting and make that decision on the 4th, so that then it could go to the city manager for the 7th, where we could actually maybe be looking at getting this thing actually starting to be painted the week that we hoped to go. And if we can't, we can't, but I wanted to sort of see if there's a way to at least vaguely keep this thing on a timeline that we had hoped for. But at that meeting time, Steve, you're okay to potentially meet for an hour on that day? My life is going to be school, so I'm not going anywhere. Christina, you just unmuted. You're okay?
Yep.
Linnea?
I'm
what
in
day did you
school
say?
until 4, so.
Okay.
What day did you say, Tracy?
On September the 4th. We could potentially do it later in the day, Linnea. I mean, I'm not going anywhere.
Want to do it at 5, or I'm wondering if Maureen could participate if it was after work, like even 5:30. I know it's a Friday, but
Well, if they're coming in on Tuesday, could we do it Thursday?
That's going to be harder. I don't finish up school till 6
Okay.
that
I don't
day.
finish till 6:30.
And in Hughes, I'm guessing if your class runs like it typically has, you're good on that. All right.
I'm actually okay anytime that week. So
Okay. So Linnea, what about you? On that.
I'm the soonest I'm available would probably be 4:30.
Okay.
I would
Emily?
prefer Thursday evening later, but
Yeah. I kind of prefer Thursday evening later too, if that's possible.
I can do it on Thursday if we could make it be at about 6:30.
that's up to Sean. I don't know if he's still listening. Sean, are you there?
I wasn't listening. What's up?
We do a special meeting, Zoom, September 3rd evening or Friday at 5:30, the 4th,
6:30.
6:30.
6:30 on Thursday or 5:30 on Friday.
I would really prefer not to do a Friday meeting.
Thank you. How about 6:30 Thursday?
What was the date again?
September 3rd. No, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yes.
What time?
6:30 p.m.
I can't. There's a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting at that time.
when does that end?
That's from 7 to 9.
is there anything on the second evening? Because maybe we could just push up if we're only giving ourselves 2 days anyway, maybe we could just make the deadline the 31st.
Nothing currently. I'm also extremely open during the day. If that helps.
Yeah, but unfortunately, everybody else, I think, once the semester starts, you just hose our time frames got decidedly complicated.
I can
Well,
do
if the
7 a.m.
designs
too.
Yeah.
If the designs are due on the 1st, would we be able to meet Wednesday evening? That's on the 2nd?
I could probably make it work. Wednesday. It's not great, but
I can do that. It's fine.
Christina?
I'm good.
All right, so let's then look at September 2nd.
Is that open, Sean? September 2nd?
Yep.
Okay, it's
Okay.
claimed. So we'll keep our normal meeting, that same 6:30 meeting time. This will be the focus of the meeting. We're not going to add nothing else on the agenda. It will just be the bike, nothing. I'm formally nothing else.
It'll
is
be,
this.
it'll be considered a special meeting, so you
Yep.
actually have to have one topic. So
Perfect.
that's perfect.
That is all we got.
Mhm.
And so that way on the 2nd, we can put we can make our recommendations. Those can get sent immediately to the city manager, right? That this is what we want. And if they think that it's got to go beyond that, that can get addressed early. But ideally, that would still let us allow painting to begin the week of that 14th through the 19th.
What time does that meeting start?
6:30.
Okay. It's on my
Right.
calendar.
Thank you so much. Perfect.
Thanks, John.
All right. So we will address the dates accordingly. All right. So trying to
Would our dates still work? I think they would still work.
They should still work, yes, with this. Okay, so with that, understanding that we need to add a sort of like website, we could put website / Instagram, right, on these applications, Linnea, right? That should hopefully give us this here. So before, as we're kind of barreling through this in our remaining 9 minutes, because I know we've got to sort of do first, Tina, how are they going to submit these applications? Where are they going to get them from, and how are they going to get them back to you?
I'm hoping that we can make them in an online document, like a Google, an online application. There's a couple
Use a
different.
Google, you can make a form on Google, Google Drive. It's super easy. Then all of them go into the same place. And you get a spreadsheet of everything, and it'll make easy for all of us to review it.
Yep. So Google Drive, and then I think you could probably download images to that too, or will they have
You can
to?
add an image box to Google Forms. So under
Okay.
Google Docs, go to Google Forms.
Yeah. No, I think we did this for Evolve Marquette and the Alliance maybe
Okay.
too. So
And
it'll
these
come
are
back.
created in Google already, and they can be saved as a PDF.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I would actually use the questions add them into the Google form so that you have containers that people can add it to, and then it can get exported into a spreadsheet. So you might have to have someone copy and paste it.
Okay.
here's-
No, we'll do that then.
Okay, so then that means if we want this to actually go, if we're talking about this goes live on Monday, is this going to be able to go live and out into the world on Monday, Tina?
Tuesday at the latest.
Okay. You mean Tuesday at the soonest?
Yes, Tuesday at the soonest. Sorry. Yes.
Okay, so that's also just letting everybody know what the timeline on that's going to be. So moving down through this, how long, Tina, I put on here that tentatively that, there's going to be a time limit here for folks to get stuff done. And as part of your volunteers, are there going to be people who are able to act as on-site liaisons while the painting is going on in terms of the volunteers that you've got sort of situated?
Yeah, right now I have 2 strong volunteers, and then of course me and Tristan. So that's 2 staff, 2 volunteers, and we're actually, the 4 of us will be stenciling. Might get some more, and the cook sign's very great. Their painter is going to, give us some tips of how to do it. We are looking we'll need more volunteers, but there's a lot of people hungry, so I'm not too worried about that. Kind of coordinating a volunteer group on site. If any of you, obviously you're not expected to at all, but it probably would be during the week though too. So, but let me know if you want to get involved in that.
Okay. So in regards to the time, do we think that 6 hours, I mean, obviously things like gratitude, which are pretty long, that's a pretty big word, but hope is much shorter, right? Fewer letters. Do we think, and part of this is also thinking about, do they bring enough people as a team to make something happen if they have a big word? Do we think that 6 hours to do this in is reasonable? Well, you don't want to give them 14 because that means somebody's got to be out there 14 hours with them. You're muted.
What about 2 shifts? What about 2 shifts?
Well, I mean, we could break it down like that. I just think we need to, but for this part of the application, we need to give a total cumulative number of hours that we're going to max grant people to do this.
I think sometimes you just don't know how long it's going to take. It might work faster and then it might be slower.
Well, in terms of planning for city staff, if you say 14 hours or 12 hours, then you have three-hour shifts or something. I don't know. Like,
We do need a limit, and that's probably
Yes.
going to change some of their complications of their designs, because we're closing off. We have to also organize, and
Mhm.
I'll find this out in another week or so, figure it out, but maybe not all words are painted at the same time, right? We
Right.
do stagger them because we have to reroute people
yeah.
Mhm.
on bike paths. That's gonna, and we haven't done this before, or I haven't, so, yeah, they're gonna have to have a limit.
So we
And
need
what
to
if it
set.
rains? What if
Well,
it
but
rains?
that's a whole other thing, right? We're not, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is under the ideal circumstances, how long, what is the maximum amount of time that we're willing to give people to execute this particular project, right? This is not the loaves and the fishes where everybody gets all the maximum amount of time they want. We need to know, what do we want to use? Because there's going to be a lot of other people and a lot of other variables that we ultimately have to coordinate here. So do we want to extend this to 8 hours?
I like Emily's
All
suggestion.
right, so I'm seeing 8. I'm seeing at least 2 nods for 8. Sweetie,
Emily, can't hear you.
just stop muting
12,
yourself.
12. I
like
wrote it in the
12.
chat, 12.
Oh, I don't have chat open because I'm trying to
Sorry.
focus on. I'm feeling like, okay, I'm going to vote for 8. I think 12 is really long. I don't doubt that people could use it, and maybe people could make, like, they could request longer.
Might look better if we give them 12. Like, for the first one, I think like nobody's done it before. I would err on the side of more time rather than less time.
All right, so can we say 10?
What if we say the goal is 8 and if 4 additional?
No, I think we need to just set a number, and then people are like, no, really, I'm going to need longer. I think my concern about 12, Emily, is that 12 means that means they could be painting from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night if we give them 12 hours, which means that somebody from the city or us would have to be there at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And we actually have to get the word stencils before they
Wouldn't
start
it be
painting.
over 2 days? The stencil's done, and then you do 6 hours one day and 6 hours another day, and you just plan that you have city staff for those 2 days, and then it's not that huge of a deal. I mean, I think the thing is if you're not surprised about having to be there for a second day, then you can plan it in your schedule. If they say all of a sudden, like, oh, I'm changed, like I can't complete this, and then it's stuck there looking like crap, and then you have to scramble to find someone to fill in to be there as a liaison, then you're putting all of us in a bad position. But if we know you have 12 hours, that we were originally going to say 8 hours or 6 hours, but we want to ensure that you're planning this time adequately and we have people on site. That way somebody isn't doing like a 14-hour shift or something. And it still potentially would look better than if we gave them a short amount of time and then they rush, or somebody makes a needs some correcting time, or.
Yeah.
So we're also then in this case, we'll deal with the logistics of it. Then it's the idea that they would have a maximum of 12 hours, but it could be split over. It will be
2 consecutive days.
but again, that could be the logistics. It must be completed in the 12 hours allocated. And as we schedule it, it could be told that it's going to be over. It won't just be necessarily one 12-hour shift. But that also does mean that from our end, it likely means that we're going to have to be able to give up some of our time to go and do this, because Tina may not have volunteers who can work on multiple days.
But I think Tina, you can do a call for volunteers for 2 days. And there are so many people in the world right now who want to volunteer because they've been looking at their walls in their house for months.
Yeah, I think this would be a fun one to volunteer with, being outside. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right, we're literally like 1 minute from our hour here. So I'll confirm the project submissions and proposals. We know when this is changed to 12 hours now. Really quickly, the requirements for RFP and requirements for certification, which is that N form, you all can just weigh in on whether we want that signed prior to scheduling or not. Ultimately, again, no, so we had the answer to that, Steve. No, they're not paid a stipend, but that contract will basically be that you're going to get it done in this time. We've approved your design. You're not going to change your design on us, and so on. This I did check against our IP documentation in our sort of guidelines. And I also tracked it back against the policy that established us with the city, which is that all temporary artwork remains property of the person who created it. So in this instance, they still retain the copyright, but by signing the agreement, we have permission to reproduce photographs and two-dimensional stuff. So that should be cool. All that's good. And this, of course, was the thing at the end. And my feeling is that this should not get signed for this particular RFP until they basically get chosen.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think, unlike the project backboard where I think we would want it at the front end, I think this one, given its scope, can wait. At least that's my feeling on that. All right. So Christina, I know, go ahead.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Christina. All right, so we'll try to kind of scroll through this last bit. Is there anything immediately within this otherwise that?
Sorry, you guys, I have another meeting too.
I know, like I said, so in this case, all right, Emily, then we're gonna table this where it is right now. But before you go, I just want to really briefly, because this is the one thing we did need to try to get to, is make a recommendation on which of these MPAC logos, and do it formally here, that we would like Forrester to move forward with. So Emily, what is your vote?
I think I voted for 3.
So the stack minimal, the one that looks like us, but that just has the little on top of its head.
I'm trying to scroll through your screen and I can't do it.
Okay. So we'll do it this way. Linnea, which was your preference?
I like the stack minimal also, the top one right there, the one that's on the screen.
Okay. So yeah, there's, I guess that, I suppose it depends on how big this is going right now. All right. So is that this one here?
Yep.
Yes.
That's what I
Okay.
like.
Hughes,
I'm still leaning towards number 4.
this one here.
It's just a little, it's related to us, but it's different.
Different. I thought the same thing. I mean, I would go for either one. Sorry.
I think
like
it works as a letterhead
Mm-hmm.
really well. I don't know that they need an Instagram for the square. So that was my question. If they feel like they needed the potential to fit in a circle or a square, then obviously then number 3 works, but I prefer number 4 right now.
I like number 4 too. So I like them both.
I agree that I think I like the distinction, if they're not trying to operate in the same kind of needs of Instagram, social media, but I know we'd also said that they might.
Yeah, because they might be fundraising that way. They might be using those platforms to fundraise for us, in which case that's going to work a lot better.
Can't we use both? Like,
No.
No,
no?
not if we're gonna do it like we should. So, I mean, Emily and Tina, you were on both on that, the Friends of component. I like both of these. My preference, if we don't need it for social media and it's more just an identifier and things on sort of print media, I like the horizontal block one more because it resembles us, but it doesn't so directly duplicate us. But if you think, based off of the discussions that you had with Jen and with Nina et al., that it will be about social media, then the stack, I think, is going to work better. Steve.
What if we
Yeah.
ask him to put the AC underneath it and it becomes just a flat version of our logo?
Oh, sure. That could work.
What do you mean?
Basically take that, make it be MPAC as a block, but it becomes this that's flat as opposed to,
Where?
so just take this and drop it down below like that.
Oh, yeah.
I can do that.
I like
Okay.
that.
Okay, so we'll
I
take
do
4, but
4
Yeah.
with modifications. Like
well, we had mods on the other one
Valid
too.
with
4
that
with
one.
mods. Okay, so I will put that, since we're not voting officially, we'll move that forward and kind of get that to him, and I'll send out an email after we meet today. 4 with mods. So we'll make a little drawing here.
It's
We are
not a perfect
officially
square
done
or
with,
circle.
Yeah.
after he
Yeah.
delivers this, we're officially done, right? We can move
Yes.
forward and pay him. Okay.
Yeah.
And he is gonna I asked him and he gave us permission to sort of to preemptively use the Public Art Commission stuff on our applications, even though we're not done. So I do have that in writing, which I was really grateful that Mike was willing to sort of step in and let us use it for our first RFP, that we can actually have that branding in place. Okay, so Linnea, if you want to go through on the applications and add that line in that is basically, that says sort of website/Instagram.
And we're switching artist to artist in print with an S. Right?
Yeah, and we'll change that. And then here, Tina, the one thing I need to know is that to apply, complete the mural application form and desired word location and submit to where?
We will provide a link. We'll put probably a link into that, and
Okay,
I don't know. I'm going to leave that to staff,
okay,
the techies. Okay.
okay. All right, I'm gonna
And
just
we'll just
highlight.
insert that. So don't give it as a PDF, Linnea, so I can insert that.
So-
These are, you should have access to them,
Yeah.
and I'll go make the changes
Okay.
right after our meeting, and then everything should be good to go.
Okay,
Perfect.
Steve,
So-
I had one last clarification on the applications for the with the words. There's
Sure.
the line about the white outline.
Mhm.
I just don't want them to feel like the artist has to paint that back in if the city was doing it.
okay.
Maybe I just not reading it right, but
Okay. All right. Or something. I'll work on the. That's not the right word, Steve, but we'll all massage that here on this one so that it looks right. And then Linnea, you can just copy and paste it.
Okay.
So that they know that they don't have to do that work, right? It is there in place for them. And it's more clear on the RFP side of it, but I'll make sure that I'll
So
find a
then
way
we'll
to.
be touching it up too then.
Yeah.
After.
All right. Folks, thank y'all a bunch. Obviously, there's still stuff that, we'll get to. We knew that the project backboard, Steve, you got that RFP done so that we'd have it in place, and I can start just reviewing it tentatively to get those initial sort of concerns and language sort of massaged a bit so that when we do get to it in our next formal meeting in September, not our preemptive one, we can sort of hit the ground running on that one too. So yeah, with that, folks, I think we're good. Thank y'all for your time, and just keep your heads above water.
Thank you
As
so
we-
much. Tracy,
you.
thank you for pushing this meeting. And you're a great chair. Thank you very
Well,
much.
thanks. I'm just trying to keep us all moving in the face of
Good job.
hurdles. So, all right,
See you
take care.
later.
We'll see
Thanks.
y'all later.
Bye.